My guest tonight is someone we did the math earlier, and I first met her over the newfangled thing of internet radio in 1998 at the Bob Berkowitz show, and she was the sidekick. I really liked this Jamye Waxman person, and she was always a fabulous female voice. And one thing after another, she has now obviously left radio and has gone into sex education. She has been going to school pretty much continuously for 10 years now. And we now often do workshops together. Our favorite duo workshop is the porn sex versus real sex, because she's a sex educator, but she's not a sex performer. She is that hybrid of a real normal person who happens to teach about sex, as opposed to a sex entertainment professional. She's a sex education professional. So please welcome Jamye Waxman.
Thanks, Nina.
Thank you. And thanks for wearing that dress, man. My view here is rocks on.
As I eat my hair.
She did it just for me. She wore that dress just for me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have you on the show because you are, like me, a sex educator, and we were talking earlier about how there can never be too many of us out there, because there are 6 billion people in the world, and 5.5 billion of them have sexual issues. And I also love your take on it, because you're very approachable, you're very real, you're very normal. And unlike me, people can get intimidated. Wow, Nina, you're a big star. You're human, and you have a very nice attitude about sex and sexuality and sexual expression. So I wanted to ask who in the beginning, why sex education for you? What brought you to sex ed?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you said a couple of different things that I'd love to touch on, but I don't feel like I chose being in the field of sexuality. I feel like it sounds really cheesy, but I remember when I was working as a radio producer thinking this chose me. I was really fortunate. I'd worked with Joan Rivers, Alan Combs, other really big New York personalities as a talk show, like producer, sidekick, whatever. And I never felt the fulfillment I felt when I talked about sexuality. I also realized, and one of the things for me that makes the sex education so important is I have my own issues. I don't have a perfect sex life. I don't have a perfect body. I have my own body image issues. So I work through them by educating. So it became this natural extension of just my curiosity around how to improve my own life and how to accept my own sexuality and my own sexual history that kept bringing me further and further along in my path. And then when I started to really get into the path and meeting all these incredible people, yourself included, I just realized, oh my God, this is just such an inquisitive, intelligent, interesting place to be. And everybody, regardless of if you choose to be asexual or you have lots of sex is something on our brain. Sexuality is like breathing and eating and sleeping. It's a part of who we are always. So how do we continuously explore that and figure out who we are, and as we grow, who we become? And sex isn't gonna go away, even if, like I said, you stop having it. It's always a part of your life, and it always defines some part of you. And so it was just really interesting to me to accept that in my own life, because my first sexual experiences were not things I talked about for years. And so to accept that in my own life and to be able to come out, so to speak, and to actually be okay with everything that I had experienced and gone through. And I'm not a victim of abuse or anything like that, but I definitely had my brain working overtime about my sexuality. So it was just a natural place to go, and it felt like the most fulfilling thing I could do, not just for myself, but for everyone. I like meeting people, you know, right. I like talking. And if I can talk to someone and one day they just say, thank you, I feel normal, or I feel better, or I understand something now, then that's satisfaction.
Indeed. I hear you, because people say, Nina, why porn? Well, first, I had to go here for my own needs. Why sex? It's like, well, because the wire got put in this socket instead of that socket. The socket over here, I would have been studying chimpanzees for 30 years, and so it's sex for 30 years. And because it is a universal concern, and I'm a people person like you, that I'm willing to talk about my experience, and people are like, oh my God, you too? Because we're shamed into being so I'm the only one with this problem. I'm the only one who thinks this way, feels this way, wants this thing. No one will ever love me. I'm deficient. Speaking as someone who's polyamorous, I kept waiting for this monogamy to hit me. I kept waiting to only want one person, and it never did. It wasn't until I was much older that I realized, oh, that's never going to change for me, and I'm this kind of a way. And I have my own body image issues, and I have my own relationship issues, and people have a hard time understanding that people say no to me all the time. I don't get anybody I want into bed. Plenty of people reject me, although they have the right to do that. So we're all just moving along. So like you, I think, well, I'm on the same path as you, I'm just a little further down it, is all. And there's people that I look at on the same path as we are, and I consider them in their own way further down the path than me. Maybe they started earlier. I mean, Betty Dodson, she's the furthest down of all. All hail Betty Dodson. And everyone else, I think we're all like in a pact, just helping each other along, and then helping people along. God, I forgot what I was going to say because you were talking something that was so interesting. But I do know, like me, you've also made movies as a director, producer.
And I find, one of the things, so I worked for 5 years at a sex shop called Babeland, which a lot of people know, as a sex educator. I really wanted to get hands-on and talk to people, feel toys, play with toys, see what was being made, produced, and bought all over the country, in New York at least, which felt like all over the country. And then I wanted to also get my hands into the adult production side, because my biggest qualm and why I love, not to have a love fest with you right now, but why I love teaching real sex versus porn sex is it is so frustrating that we do not admit, and I say we as a collective culture, that pornography is where most people are learning their sex education. So why aren't we talking about porn more? It just boggles my mind. And so I wanted to get behind the scenes, do some movies, direct. I have been on camera. I've never had intercourse on camera, but I wanted to take I wanted to just feel out every single aspect of working on an adult set so that I could better understand and better communicate with people who don't have that experience, which actually, as we say a lot, isn't as exciting as an experience as people think it's going to be. But I really feel like pornography is like the ugly stepchild of sexuality education when it shouldn't be, because there are some really amazing bits that we can take from it and teach with. And so that was, for me, I was very lucky. Candida Royale became huge mentor for me, became like a mother to me. And so she took me under her wing. I worked on Stud Hunters, and I co-wrote and produced Under the Covers, which was her last film.
Right.
And I got to really explore how she directed and then go out and make lots of mistakes on my own.
For sure. I want to talk more about that. This is why abstinence-only education really doesn't work, because there's one thing to say, we'd rather you not have intercourse before marriage, or being a virgin is the safest thing to do, but we don't then have the conversation about sex. So people are forced to look at pornography because it's the only thing that shows genitals, but pornography is entertainment as a general rule. It's not meant to be a teaching aid, it's fantasy. I call it live action cartoons, unless you or me or someone else makes an educational tape that happens to be explicit. Pornography, meaning the graphic depictions of sexual activity, is not meant to, and it's not meant to educate, it's meant to entertain and to take you away from this. And so people learn a lot, in our workshop, we learn a lot of bad messages from entertainment porn, and they try to do it at home. They try to have sex at home like they see on camera. And I like to tell people, pornography is a paid professional performance of a fantasy scenario. It's not meant to be copied. And we're professionals. Please don't try this at home this way. So people end up having to look at pornography for education, and it's a very sad thing because they feel inadequate. I can't last that long. I don't look that way. I can't walk in those clothes. How did he get it in there, etc. Where's the lube, and those kinds of things. So porn should be for fun, and then educational movies for